Hello everyone, welcome to my GMB News channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Britain and Europe are together facing a watershed moment, a turning point, a second Zeitenwende, a paradigm shift, a new world order. Regardless of which of these overused phrases best describes the dramatic shifts unfolding since Donald Trump began his second U.S. presidential term in January, politicians, diplomats and analysts all agree. Nothing will be the same again. The key question now is what, in practical terms, Europe and Britain can and will do to meet this challenge. Is this Europe's moment when it finally comes of age as a global player? Or will the EU and its close neighbors collectively fail to rise to the occasion, condemning their citizens to an era of domination by bigger, rapacious and more determined powers? Donald Trump is in the process of attempting, rashly, to do three extraordinary things. First, he is trying to force Ukraine, which has spent more than 3 years under murderous assault, to accept a peace deal on inimical terms dictated by himself and the aggressor Vladimir Putin's Russia. Second, in a stunning reversal of U.S. policy, he is seeking a rapprochement with Moscow that includes re-establishing full political and diplomatic relations, lifting sanctions and launching joint economic partnerships. Third, he is telling Europeans they must henceforth defend themselves, that the U.S., in effect, is no longer a loyal, reliable partner or even necessarily a friend, and that NATO, for 76 years the solid bedrock of transatlantic security, is dispensable. European leaders, with some exceptions on the political fringes, are united in their alarm at all three of these unwise, irrational and dangerous interventions. At the same time, most accept that even if Trump vanished accused of appeasing Putin in 2022, Macron, like many others, has learned better since. Now he warns that Russian imperialist aggression knows no borders, directly threatening France and Europe. Macron is not just talk. He has shown imaginative leadership, producing a tentative plan for a staged ceasefire that has Ukrainian support, lobbying, flattering and correcting Trump to his face in the Oval Office, and promoting an Anglo-French proposal to deploy a European assurance force in Ukraine composed of a so-called coalition of the willing. In a week that saw repeated recourse to another overused phrase, the need for Europe to step up, Germany surprised many with a positive leap into the future. A country that nurtures visceral horror of debt announced a spectacular U-turn of its own, the amending of its basic law to permit multi-billion euro investments in defense and national infrastructure. Friedrich Merz, the Christian Democrat who held off the far right to win last month's federal election, has a reputation as a deficit hawk and fiscal conservative. Not anymore. And he has gone further even than Macron in urging Europe's independence from the US and vowing ongoing expanded military aid for Kiev. Other European leaders, notably Donald Tusk, have stepped up in commendable ways. Poland's prime minister is in an unenviable position. A strong believer in the transatlantic alliance, he, like so many others, must now feel utterly betrayed by Trump. NATO is a crucial shield for Poland as it is for the three neighboring Baltic republics. Now its removal or weakening is threatened. Keir Starmer also recognizes the historic nature of this moment, and has risen to meet it. He has worked assiduously and carefully to restrain Trump's worst instincts. His evident contempt, displayed in the Commons last week, for the ignorant comments of U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance about random countries, showed he is not afraid to push back too. Starmer's collaboration with EU leaders is a very welcome post-Brexit development that should be extended beyond defence and security. Yet like them, the UK faces daunting hurdles. Although they now recognise the necessity, their shared chronic dependence on the US will be hard to break. These challenges, on reducing Europe's reliance on America, boosting its defences and maintaining support for Ukraine, were the focus of last week's emergency EU summit. As is often the case in Brussels, the results were mixed. New overall defence spending of €800 billion, £670 billion, was agreed. But whether it ever materialises will depend on national governments' willingness to borrow. The usual divisions were apparent. Hungary blocked a joint statement on Ukraine. Within NATO, most member states like Britain are now committing to higher spending. Non-EU countries such as Norway are piling in too. Oslo is belatedly yet commendably doubling its aid to Kiev. Europe is stepping up. In time, if it perseveres and its leaders keep their promises, it will be better able to deter Russia alone, and survive in a reordered, more hostile world. But how effective Europe can be in rescuing Ukraine in the short term from a developing Trump-Putin axis is in serious doubt. Trump still refuses to provide Kyiv with meaningful post-war security guarantees. His suspension of military aid and mapping and intelligence assistance is encouraging Russia to intensify attacks. More civilians are dying each day because of Trump's treachery. Each day, Ukraine is further brutalized and degraded. A just peace looks further away than ever. Entirely, a desirable but unlikely eventuality. A change in the balance of US-Europe relations is inescapable and overdue. In a national address last week, Emmanuel Macron, France's president, summed up the position well. Europe's future should not be decided in Washington or Moscow, he said. The war in Ukraine continues with the same intensity, but the US, our ally, has changed its position. As a result, Europe was entering a new era of self-reliance. The world stands on the precipice of a new order. Britain and Europe, once united under common security agreements and a shared transatlantic vision, now face an existential question. Can they rise to the moment, or will they be left vulnerable to the shifting sands of global power dynamics? Since Donald Trump began his second term as President of the United States in January, a transformation of historic proportions has been underway. His approach to foreign policy has upended decades of transatlantic cooperation, forcing European nations to reconsider their strategic dependencies and alliances. 3 bold and dangerous moves have defined his presidency so far. His insistence that Ukraine must accept a peace deal on Putin's terms, his shock rapprochement with Russia, and his declaration that Europe must defend itself without American support. NATO, for 76 years the cornerstone of Western security, is suddenly dispensable in Trump's worldview. This abrupt shift has sent shockwaves through Europe. Leaders from Paris to Berlin, from London to Warsaw, are scrambling to adjust. In France, Emmanuel Macron has been among the most vocal in warning against the perils of Russian expansionism. Gone are the days when he was accused of appeasement. Today he is a staunch advocate of European self-reliance. Europe's future should not be decided in Washington or Moscow, he declared in a national address. We must step up together. Germany, traditionally cautious in matters of defense, has also made a dramatic pivot. Friedrich Merz, the newly elected Christian Democrat chancellor, has shattered taboos by pushing through constitutional amendments to increase defense spending. Long a fiscal conservative, Merz has surprised many by championing billions in military investments. This shift signals a newfound German willingness to lead, a necessity in an era of American retreat. The United Kingdom, too, is navigating uncharted waters. Prime Minister Keir Starmer, despite Britain's post-Brexit detachment from European institutions, has embraced closer cooperation with EU leaders. His diplomatic overtures, including a joint Anglo-French proposal for a European-led security force in Ukraine, have been met with cautious optimism. In a fiery Commons debate, Starmer did not hesitate to criticize Trump's Vice President, J.D. Vance, for dismissing European security concerns as trivial. This newfound assertiveness marks a turning point for Britain's role on the world stage. The question now is whether Europe, including Britain, can sustain this momentum. The EU's emergency summit last week yielded mixed results. An €800 billion defence investment package was agreed upon, but its implementation depends on national governments' willingness to set aside their economic anxieties. Poland, a staunch advocate of transatlantic unity, now finds itself caught between its historical dependence on NATO and the stark reality of Trump's disengagement. While Trump's actions have forced Europe into action, they have also left Ukraine in a precarious position. The suspension of U.S. military aid has emboldened Russia, with devastating consequences for Ukrainian civilians. Each day as Russian bombardments intensify, the prospect of a just peace becomes more remote. European leaders must now ask themselves a difficult question. Can they do more, and can they do it fast enough? The stakes could not be higher. If Europe fails to step up, the continent risks falling prey to larger, more aggressive powers. But if it succeeds, this could be the dawn of a new era, one in which Europe is not merely an appendage to American power, but a formidable global actor in its own right. For now, the battle for Europe's future is being waged in the corridors of Brussels, the streets of Kyiv, and the war rooms of London, Paris, and Berlin. The coming months will determine whether this is truly Europe's moment, or whether history will judge it as the moment Europe faltered. So what do you guys think about this update? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like my videos, please press like and subscribe for more. I'll see you guys next time.